Feltar stood in the shadows of the great hall, his purple skin gleaming under the soft lights. He had been watching the Galactic Council for over 300 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything as pathetic as the human standing before them now. Ambassador Kang Wu looked small compared to the other beings in the room. His brown skin was pale with worry. His black hair was cut short and neat, but his clothes were simple. Not like the golden robes of the Altarian leaders, or the crystal armor of the Vexani warriors. Just a plain blue suit that looked cheap. "Honored council members," Kang Wu said, his voice steady but quiet. "I come before you today to ask for help. The human colonies on the Outer Rim are under attack." Council Prime Zethal leaned forward, on his throne. His massive form cast a shadow over the human. "Attack? From whom, little human?" "The Kethmore Empire, Your Excellency. Their raiders have hit 15 of our worlds in the past month. They take our people as slaves. They burn our cities, they kill anyone who fights back." Veltar watched the other council members. Some looked bored. Others whispered to each other and laughed quietly. The humans had been part of the Galactic Confederation for 50 years, but they were still treated like children. "The Kethmore are a known problem," said Councillor Draxon, her voice cold. "All species deal with pirates. Why should we waste our ships protecting humans when you contribute so little to our civilization?" Kang Wu's hands tightened into fists at his sides, but his voice stayed calm. "We provide raw materials, iron, copper, rare earth metals. Our miners work the dangerous worlds that other species avoid." "Exactly," Zethal said with a cruel smile. "You dig holes and carry rocks. Any primitive species can do that. What can you offer that makes you worth protecting?" The human ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Veltar saw something change in his eyes, something that made the old Altarian diplomat feel uncomfortable. "We offer our loyalty," Kang Wu said finally. "We offer our friendship. We offer our lives in service to the Confederation." "Pretty words," laughed Councillor Yaxtel from his floating chair. "But words don't stop Kethmore battle cruisers. Your species has been part of our group for half a century. What have you built? What have you discovered? What great works bear human names?" Kang Wu looked around the room. His gaze stopped on each council member for a moment. "We have built trust. We have discovered the value of cooperation. Our great work is keeping our promises." More laughter echoed through the hall. Veltar found himself not laughing. Something about the human's quiet dignity reminded him of stories from his own people's past. Stories of warriors who spoke softly before they struck. "Trust?" Zethal's voice boomed. "Cooperation? These are not achievements, human. They are weaknesses. The galaxy respects strength. It respects power. It respects results." "What results have humans produced?" asked Councillor Nixara, her mechanical voice buzzing through her translator. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your ships are slow and clumsy. Your weapons are primitive. Why should we risk our advanced fleets to protect such limited beings?" Kang Wu stood straighter. "Because the Confederation Charter promises protection to all member species. Because we have honored every treaty we signed. Because we have sent our young people to die in your wars without question. And we are grateful for your enthusiasm," Zethal said, waving his hand dismissively. "But gratitude does not equal military support. Perhaps if your species offered something of actual value beyond your primitive determination, we might consider intervention." The human ambassador stared at the Council Prime for a long moment. Veltar saw that look again. Not anger, not fear. "Something much more dangerous, I see," Kang Wu said quietly. "Then humanity will remember this day." "I'm sure you will," Zethal laughed. "You humans seem very good at remembering grudges. Now, if there is nothing else, we have important matters to discuss." Kang Wu bowed slightly. "There is nothing else, Your Excellency. Thank you for making your position clear." As the human turned to leave, Veltar noticed something that made his scales prickle with unease. Kang Wu moved differently now. His steps were measured, his back was straight, his head was high. He looked like a man who had just made a very important decision. The council members returned to their usual business as soon as the human left. They discussed trade routes and mining rights and territorial disputes. Small, comfortable problems that they understood. Veltar slipped out of the hall and followed the human ambassador. His curiosity had gotten the better of him. In the corridor outside, he watched Kang Wu activate a small communication device. "Admiral Park Sol," the human said quietly into the device. "This is Kang Wu. Invoke Protocol 7. We stand alone." The voice that answered was crisp and military. "Understood, Ambassador. Protocol 7 is now active. Safe travels." Veltar frowned. Protocol 7. He had never heard humans mention any protocols before. They had always seemed so simple, so straightforward, so harmless. The Altarian diplomat returned to his duties, but the human's words stayed with him. "We stand alone." There had been something final about the way Kang Wu said those words, something that suggested they meant more than they seemed to. 3 days later, the news arrived. Veltar was in his office reviewing trade reports when his assistant burst through the door. Sir, there's been an attack." "Calm yourself, Zixnal. What kind of attack?" "The Kethmore, sir. They hit a human world called New Busan. The reports they're terrible, sir." Veltar activated his information screen. The reports filled his display in glowing text. New Busan had been a thriving human colony. 2.3 million people. Farmers, miners, teachers, children. Families who had worked hard to build a new life among the stars. The Kethmore had come in force. 50 ships. They had demanded surrender. When the humans refused, the pirates had opened fire on the cities. They had landed troops. They had hunted down every living person on the planet. There were no survivors. Veltar stared at the reports for a long time. He thought about Ambassador Kang Wu standing before the council just 3 days ago. He thought about the man's quiet dignity as the council members mocked him. He thought about Protocol 7 and those final words. "We stand alone." Now they truly did. Deep in space, aboard the human flagship Eternal Vigilance, Admiral Park Sol read the same reports. Her dark eyes showed no emotion as she studied the images from New Busan. Burned cities, empty streets, graves that would never be dug. She turned to her communication officer. "Send a message to all human colonies. Full evacuation protocols. Every civilian transport we have." "Admiral," her second-in-command asked quietly, "what about the Confederation? Shouldn't we request support?" Sewell looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her 40 years. "The Confederation has made their position clear, Commander Kim Jun. From this moment forward, humanity handles its own problems." She walked to the great window of her command bridge and stared out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, the Kethmore were celebrating their victory. They thought they had taught the weak humans a lesson. They had no idea what lesson they had actually taught. "Admiral?" Kim Jun asked. "Your orders?" Park Sol was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Begin Phase 1. 6 weeks had passed since the New Busan massacre, and Veltar was beginning to worry. The humans had gone quiet. Not just quiet like a species in mourning. Quiet like a predator hiding in tall grass. Ambassador Kang Wu had not returned to the council chambers. His office in the diplomatic quarter was empty. His staff had been recalled to human space without explanation. When other ambassadors asked about trade agreements or mining contracts, they received polite messages saying all deals were under review. "It's probably nothing," Counselor Draxun said during a private meeting. "Humans always overreact to losses. They'll come crawling back when they need our technology." But Veltar had spent centuries studying alien behavior. This felt different. This felt dangerous. His concerns grew when his intelligence network started sending strange reports. Human cargo ships no longer traveled alone. They moved in groups, with military escorts. Human colonies had stopped sending distress signals even during natural disasters. Most unsettling of all, every human citizen living on Confederation worlds had quietly packed up and left. "They're scared," Counselor Yaxtel, declared when the council discussed the matter. The Kethmore taught them a lesson and now they're running home to hide. Feltar wasn't so sure. He had seen scared species before. They begged for help. They offered bribes. They made desperate alliances. They didn't methodically withdraw all their people and resources. The first real sign of trouble came from Captain Zurvan of the merchant vessel Prophet's Edge. He had tried to dock at the human station of Harmony Point to refuel and trade. They wouldn't let me approach, he reported to Veltar over a secured channel. Said their space was closed to all non-human vessels. When I asked why, the station commander just said new security measures. But sir, I've been trading with Harmony Point for 20 years. They know me. They trust me. This wasn't about security. What was it about? Veltar asked. Fear, sir. But not fear of the Kethmore. Fear of us. More reports came in over the following days. Human space had become a black hole of information. No traders were allowed in, no diplomats were received. Communication requests were answered with standard messages that revealed nothing. The only signs of activity were strange energy readings detected by long-range sensors, massive power signatures unlike anything in Confederation databases. When scout ships tried to investigate, they found empty space where human colonies should be. On the research station Hidden Depths, Dr. Lee Dan worked 18-hour days in a laboratory that officially did not exist. Her team of physicists and engineers had been pulled from universities across human space. They had been given unlimited resources and one simple instruction: solve the unsolvable. The theoretical frameworks are sound, she told Admiral Park, Sol during their weekly encrypted call. The math works, but the power requirement, can it be done? Sol asked. Lee Dan looked at the equations covering every wall of her lab. Numbers that described ways to bend reality itself. Formulas that could rewrite the laws of physics in small, localized areas. Yes, she whispered. God help us all. Yes. The breakthrough had come from studying Confederation technology, ironically. For 50 years, humans had been given access to alien science as junior partners. They were expected to admire and copy, never to understand or improve. But humans were very good at seeing patterns that others missed. They were excellent at asking what-if questions that others considered impossible. What if gravity wasn't constant? What if time could be manipulated? What if the fundamental forces that held atoms together could be turned off? The answers to those questions were now being built in secret factories hidden throughout human space. How long? Admiral Saul asked. 6 months for the first working prototypes, maybe less. And the other projects? Lee Dan consulted her notes. Captain Yoon B reports that the mapping is 60% complete. We know the location of every major military installation, every strategic resource, every population center in Kethmore space. What about their allies? Mapped them too. And their allies' allies. And anyone who might consider helping them. Sewell nodded approvingly. Good. What else? Commander Bay-1's infiltration teams are in position on 47 Confederation worlds. They've identified key infrastructure points and security weaknesses. If we need to send a message, we can send it clearly. And the diplomatic front? Choi Min reports that our intelligence network has grown beyond our expectations. Turns out a lot of species have grievances against the Council. They're willing to share information in exchange for future considerations. Sewell allowed herself a small smile. Humans had always been good at making friends. They just hadn't realized how useful those friendships could become. Meanwhile, Captain Hanbo piloted his stealth ship Ghost of Earth through the outer edges of Kethmore space. His vessel was invisible to their sensors, a ghost that could slip between stars without leaving a trace. Patrol pattern confirmed, he reported to his crew. 17 battle groups, standard formation. They're not expecting trouble. His navigation officer, a young woman named Lim Ho, studied the tactical display. They've gotten sloppy, Captain. Too confident after New Busan. Good, Hanbo said quietly. Overconfidence makes them predictable. The Ghost of Earth slipped, closer to the Kethmore homeworld. Its sensors recorded everything. Ship types, weapon configurations, communication frequencies, patrol schedules, information that would soon become very important. Back on the Confederation capital world, Veltar was having trouble sleeping. His dreams were filled with images of Ambassador Kang Wu's calm face and those dangerous words, "We stand alone." He decided to do something that went against every diplomatic protocol he knew. He sent a private message to human space, Ambassador Kang Wu. The message read, "I am Veltar of the Altarian delegation. I wish to speak with you privately about matters of mutual concern. I believe there may have been misunderstandings that could be resolved." The reply came back within hours. "Honored Veltar, humanity appreciates your concern. However, we have determined that the misunderstanding was on our part. We misunderstood our place in the galaxy. We will not make that mistake again." Veltar read the message 3 times. Each reading made him more nervous. There was something final about those words, something that suggested bridges being burned rather than built. His fears were confirmed when the next intelligence report arrived. Human ships were moving, not fleeing from their space but gathering within it. The energy signatures detected by Confederation sensors were getting stronger and more frequent. "They're building something," his chief analyst reported. "Something big, something we don't understand." "Military?" "Unknown, sir. The technology doesn't match anything in our databases. It's like they're operating from completely different scientific principles." That night, Veltar made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his very long life. He sent another message to human space. This time, he didn't address it to Ambassador Kang Wu. He addressed it to Admiral Park Sol directly. "Admiral," he wrote, "I believe there has been a grave error in judgment by the Council. Some of us understand that humanity offers value beyond what our leaders recognize. Perhaps we could discuss this privately." The response came from Kang Wu instead. Of Sol, "Honored Veltar, we thank you for your recognition of our worth. Unfortunately, the time for discussion has passed. However, we want you to know that individuals like yourself will be remembered when the future is written." Veltar stared at those words for a long time. When the future is written. Not if the future changes or when we resolve this crisis. When the future is written, as if the future was already decided, as if humanity was writing it. 3 days later, the Kethmore Empire launched their biggest offensive in centuries. Intelligence reports suggested they were planning to attack Earth itself, the human homeworld, with its 4 billion inhabitants. The last message from human space before communications went completely dark was simple. "Thank you for teaching us who we really are." Veltar stood at his office window, staring out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights, humanity was preparing for something that no one in the Confederation understood. He had a terrible feeling they were about to find out exactly what humans were capable of when they truly stood alone. The first star died on a Tuesday. Veltar was reviewing diplomatic reports when his assistant burst into the office, his blue skin pale with shock. Sir, you need to see this." The main communication screen flickered to life, showing an emergency, broadcast from the Kethmore border regions. The reporter, a nervous Zephyrian with trembling tentacles, was trying to make sense of readings that made no sense. "The primary star of the Kethmore home system has simply vanished," the reporter said, his voice shaking. "Not exploded, not collapsed into a black hole. It's just gone. 12 billion Kethmore are dead or dying as their homeworld freezes." Veltar felt his blood turn to ice. Stars didn't just disappear. It was impossible. Stars were massive balls of nuclear fire that burned for billions of years. You could make them explode with enough force, but making one vanish? That required power beyond imagining. "How?" he whispered. His question was answered an hour later when every communication screen in the Galactic Council chambers activated at once. The face that appeared was not one Veltar expected to see. Admiral Park Sol looked older than when he had last seen her through intelligence reports. Her black hair was streaked with gray now. Her dark eyes held depths that made veteran diplomats look away. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. "Citizens of the Confederation," Sol began, For 50 years, humanity sought to join your civilization as equals. We offered our friendship, our resources, our loyalty. We asked for nothing but the respect promised to all member species. The council chamber was silent. Even Council Prime, Zethal, who never stopped talking, listened without interruption. In return, you gave us contempt, Sol continued. When we asked for protection, you questioned our worth. When we offered cooperation, you demanded submission. When pirates murdered our children, you told us we should be grateful for the lesson. Veltar saw something in Sol's eyes that made his ancient heart race with fear. This was not anger. This was not rage. This was justice delivered by someone who had moved beyond emotion into pure calculation. Yesterday, the Kethmore Empire launched an attack fleet toward Earth, planning to finish what they started at New Busan. Today, the Kethmore Empire no longer exists. The silence in the chamber was broken by Counselor Draxoon's shocked whisper. How is that possible? Sol's image turned toward the camera as if she could see through it. We removed their star from space-time itself. The process is clean and precise. The star wasn't destroyed. It simply no longer exists in this reality. The Kethmore homeworld will remain frozen and lifeless for approximately 1 million years. That's impossible, shouted Counselor Yaxtel from his floating chair. No species has that kind of technology. You're correct, Sol said calmly. No species you know has that technology. But then, you never really tried to know us, did you? A new voice came from off-screen. Admiral, the fleet reports are in. Thank you, Captain Osu. Please share the tactical summary with our friends in the Confederation. The screen split to show a tactical display that made Veltar's legs weak. Ships, hundreds of ships moving through space in perfect formation. But these weren't the crude human vessels the Confederation remembered. These ships seemed to bend space around them, sliding between dimensions like ghosts. The human fleet now consists of 437 vessels of various classes, Captain Osu reported. Her voice was crisp and professional, as if she were discussing the weather. Each ship carries enough firepower to sterilize a solar system. We are currently deployed throughout the galaxy at strategic locations. The tactical display zoomed in on individual ships. Veltar had spent centuries studying military technology, but these vessels made no sense. They seemed to ignore basic physics. They appeared and disappeared at will. They moved faster than light without entering hyperspace. This is a trick, Zethal declared, his massive form shaking with indignation. Humans cannot have developed such technology in mere months. Sol's image smiled, and that smile was more terrifying than any weapon. You're right again, Your Excellency. We didn't develop this technology in months. We've been working on it for 50 years. While you saw us as primitive miners and farmers, we were studying your science and building on it in ways you never imagined. Dr. Li Dan's voice came from off-screen. The theoretical foundations were all in your public databases. You shared them freely because you assumed we were too stupid to understand the implications. You were wrong. Veltar remembered intelligence reports about humans accessing Confederation scientific archives. Everyone had assumed they were trying to copy existing technology. No one had imagined they were looking for the gaps in current understanding. But the resources required, Counselor Nixara protested through her mechanical translator. We are excellent miners, Sol replied. We have been quietly hollowing out asteroids and small planets for decades, building the infrastructure needed for this moment. While you ignored us, we prepared. The tactical display changed again, showing the locations of human fleets throughout Confederation space. They were everywhere, watching, waiting. What do you want? Zethal asked, his voice much smaller than usual. We want what we have always wanted, Sol said. Respect, recognition, the acknowledgement that humanity deserves a voice in galactic affairs. You have it, Draxoon shouted. You have our respect. You've proven your power. Sol shook her head slowly. You don't respect us, you fear us. There's a difference. But fear will have to do. Captain Go Yoon's voice joined the conversation. Admiral, We're receiving challenges from the Draxian Empire. They refuse to acknowledge our territorial claims. How many ships? 37 battle cruisers, Your Excellency. Their finest fleet. Saul considered this for a moment. Captain Go Yun, you have permission to demonstrate our commitment to peaceful resolution. Minimal force. Understood, Admiral. Engaging now. The screen shifted to show a new tactical display. A single human ship faced an entire Draxian battle fleet. The Draxians, ancient and proud warriors, opened fire with everything they had. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it ended, the Draxian fleet existed in a strange state that made Veltar's mind hurt to contemplate. They were caught in some kind of temporal loop, forever experiencing the moment of their defeat without ever completing it. They're not dead, Captain Go Yun reported. They exist in a closed time stream. They will experience their final battle, forever, but they will never actually die. It seemed kinder than complete destruction. The casual way she discussed rewriting the laws of time and space made Veltar realize how far out of their depth the Confederation truly was. We could have simply erased them from history, Sewell explained to the stunned council. Made it so they never existed. But we chose mercy. We hope you will remember that choice. Counselor Yaxtel found his voice first. What? What are your demands? Demands? Saul looked genuinely puzzled. We're not making demands. We're informing you of new realities. Humanity is withdrawing from the Confederation. Our space is now off limits to all non-human vessels. Any attempt to enter human territory will be considered an act of war. But the trade routes, the mining, contracts, the shared research projects, Draxun protested. All terminated, Sewell said simply. You have 72 hours to evacuate all non-human personnel from former joint installations. After that, anyone remaining in human space will be treated as a hostile presence. The transmission began to fade, but Saul's voice continued. Oh, and counselors, the next time someone asks you for help, you might want to listen. You never know what they're truly capable of when you force them to stand alone. The screens went dark, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Veltar slowly made his way back to his office, his mind reeling. In the space of an hour, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely. The species they had dismissed as primitive had revealed themselves to be beyond advanced, but what terrified him most wasn't their technology. It was their restraint. They could have destroyed the entire Confederation in minutes. Instead, they had chosen to withdraw and issue warnings. That suggested a level of strategic thinking that made all previous assumptions worthless. His communication device chimed. A message from human space addressed to him personally. Honored Veltar, Admiral Sol wishes you to know that your attempts at private communication were appreciated. Individuals who showed wisdom will be remembered when the new order is established. We suggest you prepare your people for significant changes in galactic politics. Veltar stared at the message for a long time. Then he began composing reports that would change everything his government thought they knew about the galaxy. The humans were no longer asking for a seat at the table. They had built their own table, and everyone else was about to discover whether they deserved an invitation to sit at it. The Confederation's response to humanity's ultimatum was swift and predictably stupid. Veltar watched from the gallery as the emergency council session devolved into chaos. Species that had spent centuries looking down on humans now faced a reality they couldn't accept. They were no longer the dominant powers in the galaxy. We cannot let this stand, roared General Vexhan of the Draxian Military Command. If we bow to human demands now, we'll be their slaves forever. They destroyed our primary fleet in 4 minutes, Counselor Nixara pointed out through her mechanical translator. What exactly do you propose we do? We form an alliance. Unite all the member species. Show these upstart humans that we won't be intimidated. Veltar closed his eyes and tried not to think about how badly this was going to end. He had spent weeks analyzing the human demonstration of power. The removal of the Kethmore star wasn't just advanced technology. It was a casual display of abilities that made current Confederation science look like cave paintings. And yet his fellow council members were discussing military resistance as if they were dealing with a normal diplomatic crisis. The Tauran Republic has agreed to contribute ships, announced Councillor Draxon. The Zephyrian Collective as well. If we combine our fleets, we'll die faster, Veltar interrupted quietly. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the old Altarian diplomat. Honored Veltar, Council Prime Zethal said carefully. Do you have something to contribute to this discussion? Veltar stood slowly. His ancient bones creaked, but his mind was sharp as ever. Yes, Your Excellency. I have reality to contribute. He activated the chamber's main display and showed the tactical analysis he had been working on for weeks. The humans removed a star from existence, not destroyed it, removed it. Do you understand what that means? They can manipulate space-time itself as easily as we manipulate basic matter. Technology can be countered, General Vexhan insisted. Every weapon has a weakness. Can it? Veltar asked. Their ships appear and disappear at will. They move faster than light without using hyperspace. They can trap entire fleets in temporal loops. What weakness do you see in these abilities? The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then what do you suggest? Zethal asked. Surrender? I suggest we consider the possibility that we made a very serious mistake 50 years ago when we dismissed humanity as primitive. Before anyone could respond, every communication screen in the chamber activated. But this time, it wasn't Admiral Sol who appeared. It was a young human woman in a simple gray uniform. Honored counselors, she said with a polite bow. I am Diplomatic Envoy Xin Yu, representing humanity in this matter. I bring greetings from Admiral Sol and an offer of peaceful resolution. Peaceful? Zethal laughed harshly. After you destroyed an entire star system? The Kethmore chose their fate when they attacked our worlds, Xin Yu replied calmly. We gave them the same choice we now offer you, coexistence or elimination. They chose poorly. Veltar studied the young woman carefully. She looked to be barely 30 years old, but her eyes held depths that reminded him of Admiral Sol. There was something unsettling about her calm confidence. What are humanity's terms? Councillor Draxon asked. We require 3 things. Xin Yu said, consulting a simple notepad. First, recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Our space is our space, no exceptions. Reasonable, Zethal said grudgingly. Second, representation on the Galactic Council proportional to our demonstrated capabilities, which would be? General Vexhan asked suspiciously. Xin Yu smiled, and that smile made Veltar's skin crawl. We currently possess the most advanced technology in known space. We can eliminate any threat to galactic peace in minutes. I would say that qualifies us for significant representation. And the third term? Nixara asked. An apology. The chamber erupted in outrage. Council members shouted over each other, their various languages creating a cacophony of indignation. The idea that they should apologize to humans was apparently more offensive than the loss of an entire star system. Xin Yu waited patiently for the noise to die down. When it finally did, she continued as if nothing had happened. You dismissed our request for help when our people were being murdered. You questioned our worth when we sought friendship. You mocked our contributions when we offered cooperation. A simple acknowledgement of these errors would go a long way toward healing old wounds. Never. Zethal slammed his massive fist on his throne. The Confederation does not apologize to inferior species. Xin Yu's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around her. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. I see, she said quietly. Then I'm afraid this negotiation is over. Wait, Veltar called out, standing from his seat. Perhaps we could discuss. There is nothing to discuss, Xin Yu said, her voice taking on a tone of finality. We offered peace, you chose pride. So be it. The screens went dark, leaving the council chamber in tense silence. That went well, General Vexhan said sarcastically. Now what? His question was answered 6 hours later when the first reports started coming in. Captain Baywan had been busy during the past few months. Her special operations teams, Invisible and Patient, had spent their time learning everything about Confederation infrastructure. They knew which power stations supplied which cities. They knew which communication hubs controlled which sectors. They knew which facilities were critical to each world's survival. The cyber warfare attacks began at exactly midnight, Confederation Standard Time. Every major military installation in Confederation space suddenly found their computer systems compromised. Not destroyed or damaged, but completely taken over. Their own security protocols were turned against them. Their weapons systems refused to function. Their communication networks broadcast messages that no one had authorized. Nam Ki, Humanities, Chief of Cyber Warfare, sat in his command center aboard the human vessel Digital Phantom and watched as decades of careful preparation paid off. Draxian home defense grid is under our control, reported one of his technicians. Zephyrian communication network compromised, called out another. All Confederation military databases have been copied and are being analyzed, a third technician announced. Nam Ki nodded approvingly. Phase 2 is complete. Begin Phase 3. Across the galaxy, hidden human installations activated systems that had been years in the making. Not weapons exactly, something much more sophisticated. Information warfare. Every communication device in Confederation space suddenly began broadcasting the same message, not in the common trade language, but in each species' native tongue. Personal messages, specifically tailored to each individual who received them. Veltar's device chimed, and he found himself reading a message that made his blood freeze. Honored Veltar, we know about your private investments in human mining operations. We know about your secret reports to the Altarian government recommending closer ties with humanity. We know about your daughter's studies at a human university, and how proud you are of her friendship with her human classmates. We know everything about you. We know everything about everyone. Similar messages were being received by millions of beings across the Confederation. Government officials discovered that their private communications had been monitored for years. Military leaders learned that their strategic plans were known in advance. Business leaders found out that their secret deals were not secret at all. How is this possible? Zethal demanded when the council reconvened in emergency session. His question was answered by Captain Han Bo, whose image appeared on the chamber's screens without invitation. For 50 years we have been watching you, the human officer said, calmly. We have been learning your languages, studying your cultures, mapping your societies. While you saw us as primitive miners, we were building the most comprehensive intelligence network in galactic history. The tactical display activated, showing a web of connections that spanned the entire Confederation. Every government, every military unit, every major corporation was represented by glowing dots connected by streams of information. We know your strategic capabilities, your economic vulnerabilities, your political weaknesses, Han Bo continued. We know which of your officials can be bribed, which can be blackmailed, and which simply need to be convinced that cooperation serves their interests. This is impossible, General Vexhan protested. No species has this kind of surveillance capability. No species you bothered to study, Han Bo corrected. You assumed we were too primitive for advanced intelligence gathering. You were wrong about that too. Veltar felt a chill of understanding. The humans hadn't just been preparing weapons during their 50 years in the Confederation. They had been preparing for this exact moment. Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting had been an opportunity to gather information. What do you want? Zethal asked, his voice much smaller than usual. Han Bo's image smiled. We want what we have always wanted. Respect, recognition, and now acknowledgement that humanity deserves a voice in how this galaxy is governed. And if we refuse, then you will discover that we have prepared for that possibility as well. The screen shifted to show new tactical data. Human ships were moving throughout Confederation space, no longer hiding their presence. They appeared near every major world. 6 months later, Veltar stood in his new office on New Geneva, capital world of what was now called the Reformed Galactic Confederation. The view from his window showed a city that had been built in mere weeks, using human construction techniques that still made his head hurt to contemplate. The transition had been surprisingly smooth. The old Confederation had dissolved not through conquest, but through simple acknowledgement of reality. When every military system was under human control, when every communication network carried human oversight, when every strategic resource was monitored by human intelligence, resistance became pointless. More importantly, the humans had kept their word about preferring cooperation to conquest. "The morning briefings are ready, Counselor Veltar," his new assistant said. She was a young human named Co Ray, assigned to help him adapt to the new governmental structure. She was polite, efficient, and casually mentioned technologies that could reshape planets as if she were discussing the weather. "Thank you, Co Ray. Any urgent matters?" "The hegemon wishes to speak with you about the Draxian integration proposals. Also, Admiral Kojin requests input on the new mixed crew training protocols." Veltar nodded and made his way to the hegemon's office. The title still felt strange to him, not emperor or supreme leader, but hegemon, a term from ancient human history meaning leader among equals. Even in their moment of absolute triumph, humans insisted on maintaining the fiction that other species were partners rather than subjects. The woman who held that title was even more remarkable than the title itself. Moon Da had been a professor of interspecies relations at a human university before the crisis began. Now she governed a galactic confederation of 300 species, with a combination of gentle authority and absolute competence that made even former enemies respect her. "Veltar," she greeted him warmly. "Please sit. I need your advice on a delicate matter." The old Altarian diplomat settled into his chair and studied the human leader. Moon Da was younger than Admiral Sol, probably in her 40s, but she carried herself with the same quiet confidence that seemed to characterize human leadership. "The Draxians are struggling with the integration," she continued. "Their warriors are having difficulty accepting human command structures, even though we've been careful to preserve their cultural autonomy." "What kind of difficulties?" "Pride, mostly. They're used to being the strongest military force in their sector. Now they're junior partners in a fleet commanded by humans half their age who can destroy planets with single ships." Veltar considered this. "Perhaps they need to understand that strength and honor can take different forms." "My thoughts exactly. Would you be willing to serve as cultural liaison? Your people have adapted well to the new structure." "Because we were smart enough to recognize reality quickly," Veltar replied. "The Draxians are warriors. They need to feel useful." Moon Da smiled. "Which is why Admiral Kojin has suggested creating the peacekeeping division, mixed crews, with experienced Draxian officers serving alongside human technical specialists. Let them feel like protectors rather than subjects." It was a brilliant solution and typical of human thinking. Rather than crushing Draxian pride, they were redirecting it toward useful purposes. The same pattern was being repeated throughout the galaxy as former Confederation species found new roles in the human-led order. "I'll speak with their leadership," Veltar promised. After the meeting, he made his way to the central plaza where the real miracle of human rule was on display. Species that had been enemies for centuries now worked side by side. Zephyrian traders negotiated with Altarian merchants while human children played with alien youngsters nearby. The secret wasn't military dominance, though that certainly helped maintain order. The secret was that humans genuinely seemed to want other species to thrive. Captain Yunbi's research vessels had made more scientific breakthroughs in 6 months than the old Confederation had achieved in decades. But instead of hoarding the discoveries, humans shared them freely. Medical advances that could extend lifespans were given to species that had opposed them. Agricultural techniques that could feed billions were distributed without charge. "It's almost suspicious," Counselor Draxun had complained during a recent meeting. "Why do they help their former enemies?" Veltar had watched Seoray's reaction to that question. The young human had looked genuinely puzzled, as if the idea of not helping was incomprehensible to her. Because that's what civilized people do, she had said simply. The most remarkable change was in the military structure. Admiral Ko Jin commanded a fleet that included vessels from dozens of species, but the human ships remained the backbone of galactic defense. Their capabilities had only grown since the crisis began. Veltar had been granted access to some of the technical briefings, and what he learned kept him awake at night. The Starkiller weapon used on the Kethmore homeworld was considered obsolete. Now, human scientists had developed tools that could manipulate time, reshape matter at the quantum level, and apparently create pocket dimensions for industrial purposes. Yet they used these godlike abilities for peaceful construction projects and exploration missions. Captain Han Bo, once commander of stealth operations, now led mixed-species exploration fleets to the galaxy's edge. His report spoke of new worlds, new resources, new possibilities for all the member species. Commander Bei Wan had transitioned from special operations to something called Cultural Integration Services, helping newly contacted species adapt to galactic civilization without losing their unique identities. Even Nam Ki, the cyber warfare specialist who had crippled the Confederation's computer networks, now worked on improving communication systems and ensuring that all species could participate equally in galactic commerce. They really meant it, Veltar realized during one of his regular conversations with Dr. Li Dan, when they said they wanted cooperation instead of domination. The brilliant physicist looked up from her latest project, something involving the creation of artificial wormholes for faster travel. Of course we meant it. Why would we want to rule through fear? That's exhausting and ultimately self-defeating. But you have the power to do anything you want. Exactly. Which is why we choose to do the right thing. She paused in her work and looked at him seriously. Veltar, do you know what humans learned from studying your civilizations for 50 years? That we underestimated you? That power without wisdom leads to collapse. Your species had advanced technology and vast resources, but you used them to maintain hierarchies instead of solving problems. You competed instead of cooperating. You hoarded instead of sharing. She gestured toward the window, where the diverse population of New Geneva went about their daily lives in peaceful coexistence. We don't want to repeat your mistakes. We want to do better. That evening, Veltar found himself in the Memorial Gardens, a quiet space at the center of the city dedicated to those lost during the transition. The largest memorial was for New Busan, 2.3 million names carved in stone, representing the human colony that had been destroyed by Kethmore raiders. But there were other memorials too, smaller ones for Confederation soldiers who had died during the integration process, markers for diplomats and civilians caught in the crossfire, even a simple plaque honoring those who acted with honor during difficult times. Veltar was surprised to see his own name among those listed. You noticed, a familiar voice said behind him. He turned to find Admiral Park Saul approaching through the garden paths. She looked older now, more tired, but there was peace in her eyes that hadn't been there during the crisis. I don't deserve recognition, Veltar said quietly. I was part of the system that ignored your people's suffering. But you tried to change that system when it mattered, Saul replied. You reached out when others turned away. That took courage. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the memorial fountains cycle through displays honoring the dead of dozens of species. Admiral, Veltar asked finally, what happens now? Humanity has achieved everything it wanted. You have respect, recognition, authority over the galaxy's future. What's next? Sewell was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. We keep the promise we made to ourselves, she said eventually. We promised that no one would ever again be denied help because others considered them worthless. We promised that strength would be used to protect the weak, not dominate them. We promised that the galaxy would be better for everyone, not just for those at the top. And if other species challenge that promise? Soul's expression grew serious. Then they'll discover that mercy is a choice we make every day. Not because we must, but because we can. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Veltar, Thank you for helping us understand that not everyone in the old system was our enemy. That made this transition much easier. As the Admiral walked away, Veltar remained in the garden, thinking about the strange turns his life had taken. He had begun this journey as a diplomat for a proud civilization that thought itself superior to primitive humans. Now he served as an advisor to those same humans, who had proven themselves capable of destroying stars and remaking the galaxy according to their will. But the most remarkable thing wasn't their power. It was their choice to use that power responsibly. Above him, the stars shone peaceful and bright,